lot to do today. What we're going to do is I'm going to start by talking about new products and product development. And then a number of you had questions about the article reviews and your grades, but it seems that nobody wants to come to my office at 7:30 in the morning, which is when my office hours are. So I'm going to start by talking about new products. Then I'm going to stop and I will go ahead and give those who want the exams back, your exams back so you can study for the final. The average score in here on the second exam was a 62, so I'm imagining there's going to be quite a number of people who are going to want to take the final. So I'll give you these back in case you want them, so that you have your keys so that you can study for that. The final is made up. It's 25 questions of questions that you've already seen from the previous exam. So this is your opportunity to study for that. And then after I pass those out, I will meet with those people who want to ask me questions about their article review and the grades that they got. Or, please pay attention, I want you to look at your grades and see if you're missing anything on the grades so that I can update those if you've got something that I missed or overlooked in terms of critical thinking or things like that. So we'll do that at the end of class. I'll pass these back. And then on Tuesday, we'll continue talking about product development, product brand management, and finish that chapter. So it's argued by some scholars in marketing that companies, in order to stay competitive, need to constantly be generating new ideas. And some scholars even put a number on that, suggesting that they need to be working on development of at least 25 new ideas at any one time. And some even go further and say that they need to be working on 25 new ideas or something like that in a quarter or 6-month period. Why is that? Well, because things change in the marketplace all the time. Tastes change, preferences change, and so we've got to constantly be innovating. Just like a lot of companies go broke within the first 5 years of initiating their launch, a lot of products or services fail within the first 5 years. And some that you would think, even from big companies, don't necessarily become successes, even though you would think that they probably should be a success. One of them that you might think of should be a success, and a company that should have a good track record, is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is the number one, and when we talk about branding on Tuesday, it is the number one most valuable brand in the world, depending on which year it is. I think a couple years ago, Apple actually surpassed Coca-Cola in the valuation estimation of their brand. But you can see that Coca-Cola is an umbrella for a lot of other brands, some of which you probably haven't even heard of because they've lost popularity. And we'll talk about this on Tuesday, the product life cycle. So what's an example of that they still have, and we'll talk about what you should do in that product life cycle with regard to products that are not necessarily as profitable as they once were. How many of you have heard of this product? This is one of Coca-Cola's brands. Oh my gosh, have you ever seen it? No, have you ever tasted it? It's god-awful. It was the first mass-marketed diet drink called Tab. Why do they still make it? What? Oh, you thought I was pointing at Vanilla Coke. I'm pointing at this, oh here, I'll circle it. Tab, right there. Anybody heard of Tab? No, one person has heard of Tab. 2 people have heard of Tab. Did you say you tried it?
I don't remember trying it. He orders one in Back to the Future.
Yeah, product placement, and when we get to advertising again, that's how all of this integrates. So you have to constantly be working on new ideas and product development in order to stay competitive, because a lot of things are not even going to work. Coca-Cola in the 1980s came out with a new product, a miserable failure. And it was really as a result of answering Pepsi's challenge. Pepsi did this thing called Take the Pepsi Challenge when I was a kid in elementary school. I remember this, where they did taste tests, and people actually preferred the taste of Pepsi by something like 2 to 1 in those taste tests. Why did they like Pepsi in those taste tests 2 to 1? Anybody remember?
They're blindfolded.
Well, it wasn't that you were blindfolded, you just didn't know which cup you were getting. What?
It had to do with the sweetness. The brain responds to the sweetness.
They like the sweet, but people don't like it for more than, what was the taste test?
It was just the immediate reaction.
It was an ounce. And what happens with, it's one of the reasons that Pepsi is an inferior communist product, because it's too sweet. It's good for that initial taste, and if all you had was an ounce, people liked it more, but people didn't like it for an entire 12-ounce can of it. They liked it if it was an ounce. So Coke comes up with, we gotta compete with Pepsi, comes up with new Coke. And they decided to ditch the original Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, one of the most valuable brands in the world, launches this product, and what happens with new Coke? It's a complete and utter disaster, right? Complete and utter failure. People started boycotting Coke. There were all of these calls, and they did what? You can't buy new Coke anymore. They brought back Coca-Cola Original because it was a marketing failure. You would have thought, with all of the research and stuff that went into that decision, that it would have been successful. Here's another example, and I thought this one would be really, really a successful product.
Okay, Glass, record a video.
This is it. We're on in 2 minutes.
Okay, Glass, hang out with the Flying Club.
Google photos of tiger heads. You ready? You ready?
Right there. Okay, Glass, take a picture. Okay, Glass, record a video.
After this bridge, first exit.
Google. J closest to God. Arrow.
Google jellyfish.
Let's see. It's beautiful.
So, we'll watch, for those of you who haven't seen it, what do you think of that promotional video for it? It was awesome, wasn't it? Doesn't that look like a lot of fun? I mean, it's all of these activities, so this is what it looked like.
You have Glass. Congratulations. In the next few minutes, we'll show you how to set it up.
You can turn on glass by pressing the round power button for about a second. The white light behind the button will turn on and remain lit while glass starts up. You'll know glass is on when the display is lit and you see the glass logo. Put glass on. Rotate the display to see the entire image. To get the right fit, adjust the nose stems. These stems are designed to be adjustable, so don't worry about bending them. The nose pads sit on the bridge of your nose, right there. The display should be above your line of sight. Yep, just like that. Now it's time to launch the MyGlass app on your phone. Hit continue to move on with setup. If you ever need more help, check the Glass Help Center.
So one of the things that they talked about in the Alessandro Acquisti video on why privacy matters is he mentions this, and that's one of the things that already dates that TED Talk, that TED video of why does privacy matter, because glass was a failure. How many of you think that's a totally cool product? How many of you would have used it if it had actually gone to beyond beta testing? People had horrible reactions to people wearing it. They thought it was creepy and spooky. They wanted to know if they were being recorded and filmed. All of a sudden, this is an issue. The average American is photographed or filmed 200 times in a day. But seeing somebody with this product on their face brought it to your attention. This is a product that I would have thought, and the first time I saw it, I thought this is going to be an instant and huge success. This is the next revolution in technology. It's completely innovative, isn't it? And yet, it didn't work. Why are there reasons for marketing failure? Well, if you look at page 252, 251, 252, incomplete market and product protocol before product development starts, or not satisfying customer needs are critical factors. I think they did probably the protocol correctly. Google, unlike Apple, has done more marketing research than Apple has in many instances, and yet it still fails. Too little market attractiveness. It was going to be $2,000, I think, to buy it initially. Is that too expensive for a product that's basically what? It's basically a toy. Is it really all that useful? I don't know. It's just sort of a cool gadget to have. And for a cool gadget, it was probably not attractive enough. And then couple that with the fact that people actually had problems with the privacy issue, which may have been issue number 5, bad timing. Is it a good time right now in Oklahoma to launch a new product or service? Why not? The oil and gas market is experiencing an enormous amount of upheaval. So if you wanted to start a new restaurant, for example, in Oklahoma City right now, I would suggest to you that that might be bad timing. Because when people start worrying about their income, what do they stop doing? They stop eating out as much, or they stop eating out at restaurants that are more expensive. And so if you wanted to start a new high-scale restaurant in the Devon Tower, I don't know, Vast or something like that, it may have a bad timing issue. Even if there was initially demand, the result of the economy switching around has led to a problem. What kinds of products actually do well being launched in bad times? Liquor. My home county, Logan, just voted on Tuesday allowing liquor by the drink to be sold on Sundays. We had that good Protestant ethic in Logan County, unlike Oklahoma County, which is full of heathens, where they allowed liquor by the drink on Sunday. We just now got it in Logan County on Sunday. And the reason why is a lot of our restaurants started saying things like, we can't compete on Sunday when people want to go to Oklahoma County and get a drink. So we passed liquor by the drink. Alcohol, new alcohol products do really, really well when the economy is bad. probably not the best time to launch if the economy is bad or in turmoil. That could have been another problem with Google's launch. Is the economy was still, at the time that they released it in 2013, was still what? Was still suffering. It was still recovering from really bad economic times. And $2,000 for a product that is mostly so that you can play is maybe bad timing. Poor product quality. I don't think they had that problem with this because I think it was a well-manufactured product. I actually saw one of them and got to play with it for just a little bit. No economic access to buyers. Poor execution of the marketing mix, branding, package, pricing, and promotion. Or an insignificant point of difference. This is another one. There are lots and lots of soft drink companies out there. There are now becoming sort of boutique soft drinks. If you go out on Route 66, which is called 2nd Street in Edmond, you can go to Arcadia and you can come across a little restaurant that's on the way to my ranch called what? Pops. And what is that was, by the way, Pops was a good old Aubrey enterprise, and good old Aubrey went to God himself and died it, and now good old Aubrey's no longer with us. That was a good old Aubrey enterprise. The idea was we'll have lots and lots of soft drink. Why do most of those soft drinks not take off and compete against Coke and Pepsi? Insignificant point of difference. There's just not enough difference there. The big manufacturers of those soft drinks, Coke and Pepsi, dominate the market share. So how can you ensure marketing success? Well, you start with the new product. There are 7 steps, and they're started on page 254 of your text. The new product development strategy. Again, this is where you have to start combining things from other chapters, and you have to start this process by doing a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so at the beginning of class, I had you list sort of your 3 strengths so that you can come up with a brand identity for your groups. So you do the SWOT analysis and combine it with an environmental scan to determine what kinds of things are out there. The company that I worked for when I left higher education and the bastion of the ivory tower to go into industry was a technology company that produced learning management systems for K through 12 products. And we had assessment, prescription, testing, and one of the things that happened in the environment was there was a big change in the political environment when George W. Bush came to office that made our product particularly attractive. And we had some strengths and some opportunities out there because of the No Child Left Behind bill. It insisted that poor performing schools would start losing federal funds or have to fire administrators. And so we were able to take advantage of this environmental scan and combine it with one of our strengths, which was that we were a very low-cost producer of the product that we were producing, which was these learning management systems for K through 12. So you combine the environmental scan and the SWOT analysis to start developing your strategy. Idea generation. Where do ideas come from? And here's an example of, you can get ideas that seem to be a failure initially, but maybe a success. I've given you 2 examples, New Coke and Google Glass, that were market failures. And there's an example in 3M's product line of something that initially seemed to be a failure that turns into a huge success for them. And it's part of the development process on an internal scale where you do research and development internally. What is 3M known for? What? They're known for Post-it notes, but what led to the Post-it note invention? What's 3M known for? Adhesives. That's one of their big product lines. They're known for adhesives. How many of you had braces in high school? Almost everybody. How many of you had a light cure brace? When I got my braces when I was a little kid, put the cement on and it took forever. The dentist or the orthodontist would have to hold the bracket there for quite a while for it to seal. 3M comes up with a product which was a quick cure adhesive to seal brackets on your teeth called LiteCure. It's very strong. It bonds to the teeth very well. And what do? Well, they put it on your tooth, they put the bracket in, and then they shine ultraviolet light on it and it cures to it. Anybody have that product? You had LiteCure? That's a 3M product. So 3M allows their developers to engage in things that are not necessarily corporate sponsored. They can spend up to 20% of their time working on their own research and development products. One of their scientists comes up with an adhesive that doesn't really adhesive, or it's not terribly sticky the way you would need for maybe a LiteCure or a tape or Gorilla Glue or something like that. But it turns out that this, what would seem to be a failure because it was only moderately adhesive, turns into a huge success. And that's Post-its. Because it turns out that you could peel it off of another piece of paper fairly easily. So this idea generation, so if you come from your internal staff, where else can you get ideas from? In this idea generation phase. You can get it from customers, listening to customers, listening to the people that deal with your customers directly, your sales force. So your sales force becomes a critical aspect in terms of being your eyes and ears with those end users that actually utilize the product. It can also come from your middlemen or your intermediaries, which we'll talk about when we talk about distribution channels in here towards the end of the semester. Those people can be sources of information and idea generation that can be very rich. So you start by brainstorming idea generation. You can get it from employees, internal research and development, customers and suppliers, your own labs, all of those sources. Then you go through a screening and evaluation process. Looking at the technical feasibility of producing stuff. Do you have the ability to do this? Do you have the resources necessary? Looking at a business analysis. Developing a prototype for it. They talk about test markets on page 259. This can be a big determination in the success or failure. And this is where Google, the Google Glass actually failed. It was in the beta testing of it. They released it to people in limited release to go out and try it. And what they did is they got people like they showed in the video that were going to use it in enormously creative ways. And that's where they discovered that this was not going to be a big success. Some things you can't test market. You can test market every product. So we can classify products, and one of the things that we have to think about are different types of products. Some products are very easy to test, others are not. When we talk about the product aspect of the 4 Ps, we also include in that services. Can you test business test services? Or is it harder to do a test market in services? It's harder to test that. Not impossible necessarily, depending on the service, but because some services are so complex that it's difficult to test market some of that. And then finally, commercialization of your product. Your text talks about, and this is one of the things that changes fast, and one of the companies that we have in Oklahoma that's a made in Oklahoma product, for those of you that are interested in this, where you can run into problems. How many of you have heard of this? You've probably heard of, most of you have heard of Head Country, right? That's an Oklahoma product. Where did they start? Where did Head Country start? Ponca City. How many of you like Head Country? When I was getting my PhD in New Mexico, I literally broke down and cried when they started carrying Head Country Barbecue at the Walmart right next to my house, because it's a great barbecue product. This is another company that started in Oklahoma, and it's an example of somebody who didn't actually go through this whole new product process, and her name is Mary Boothman. She's a really interesting person. And she moves back to Enid to take care of her mother with her husband from California, and they weren't getting the kind of Mexican food that they had experienced in California in Oklahoma, because all kinds of regions of the state have different tastes in terms of Mexican food. In Oklahoma, ours tends to be more aligned with what? Tex-Mex. What's different from Tex-Mex? Well, Santa Fe, New Mexican is really, really different. And then Southern New Mexican is even different from Santa Fe, New Mexico food. And then the California Mexican food has been more influenced by what? It's been more influenced by Baja California, in that region. And so they weren't finding any Mexican food restaurants that they really liked. And her husband said, why don't we open a Mexican food restaurant? And she said, I don't think I want to do that. I mean, the woman's whole story is about how she didn't want to do this. And then they decided that the Mexican food restaurant was too much work and they were doing other things. And he said, but everybody asks for our salsa. So why don't we commercialize our salsa? And she said, I don't think I want to do that. And she had no experience in doing this, but there was a food company that was located in Enid called Pierre Foods that she went and talked to and was able to get advice on how to go about commercializing this. Well, she was really lucky because one of the things that she didn't do, and she's a UCO graduate, by the way. She graduated with a degree in communications from the College of Liberal Arts, but she didn't have a business background and she had no experience. So she just started, after they commercialized the product, walking around to stores and walking into Walmart and saying, would you sell my product? And she got lucky because at the time, Walmart would actually allow you, if you were a store manager, to source locally produced products in limited trial runs. And at that time, she managed to get into the Walmart. But a lot of people run into things with problems in these kinds of startups because there are slotting fees that are expected, and there may be punitive if it doesn't sell enough. Grocery stores' space is limited when you have something like 20,000 items that you have to carry in a grocery store, and so they expect slotting fees for that. And she said, you know, I had no idea about any of this. I had to learn on the fly. But it's an example of how a company that started in Enid, Oklahoma, with somebody who had almost no experience and didn't really understand this process, actually becomes a big success, whereas Coca-Cola and Google Glass were big failures. That's maybe not what I would suggest is the way you should do it, but it is an example of an Oklahoma company that does this. And so there are special problems when you think of, and there are questions on there with regard to the commercialization of grocery products. Speed is a factor of new product success. The first, why is it that Apple's iPod really dominated the market? Who launched, what's a big company that launched a product to compete with the iPod that failed? Zoom. And that was launched by another big company. Why was Apple's iPod a success and Zoom wasn't? Speed to market, right? Introduction. Next time we'll talk about the product life cycle, and we'll talk about managing brands within the product life cycle. But I'm going to stop there for today so that I can give you your test and meet with those people who want to meet with me. If you don't want to meet with me, you can get your test and you can then work in your groups. I have Mr. Hernandez. I have not gotten an email from you, so if you want to talk to me, see me. Why don't we start out with, I'm going to ask for to go in order, so A through H.